I had just finished my first year of medical residency in Chicago, and honestly, I needed a break. Moving from Mumbai to Chicago 3 years ago for medical school was a huge change, but I've been fortunate enough to build a small but tight-knit group of friends here, all Indian expats like me. We understand each other's struggles and celebrate our culture together, which makes being away from home a little easier. That Saturday, my friend and I had planned to meet at this cozy cafe downtown. She's also doing her residency, but at a different hospital. We hadn't seen each other in weeks due to our crazy schedules, and we were finally both free on the same day. We got to the cafe around 2 p.m., ordered our drinks, and found a quiet corner to catch up. I was telling her about this interesting case at the hospital involving a patient who had come in with mysterious symptoms that turned out to be something completely unexpected. That's when I noticed this older white woman at the next table. She kept turning her head toward us, clearly trying to listen to our conversation. It made me really uncomfortable, so I switched to Hindi mid-sentence. I told my friend that I was going to switch to Hindi because someone was being nosy, gesturing slightly toward the woman. My friend nodded, understanding immediately, but this seemed to aggravate the woman even more. She started openly glaring at us, not even trying to hide it anymore. A few minutes later, a waitress approached our table. She apologetically explained that another customer was feeling uncomfortable and wanted us to speak English. I politely told the waitress that the language I speak is my choice. The waitress was really nice about it, expressing that she completely respected my decision. She walked back to Karen's table, and we could see her explaining something to her. Suddenly, Karen's face turned bright red, and she stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. Karen started screaming at us, telling us that this was America and that we should speak English or go back to our country. She was literally having a meltdown in the middle of the cafe. People stopped eating and started staring. The manager quickly came over. The manager told Karen that they would have to ask her to leave, as they don't tolerate this kind of behavior. Karen responded by shouting that we were the ones who should leave, claiming we were being disrespectful. It took about 5 minutes of the manager and 2 other staff members to finally get her to leave the cafe. We tried to enjoy the rest of our meal, though the atmosphere was definitely tense. About 20 minutes later, we finished up and headed out. To our shock, Karen was still there, sitting on a bench right outside the cafe. The moment she saw us, she jumped up like a jack-in-the-box. She started yelling at us, calling us disrespectful witches and threatening to teach us a lesson. Before I could process what was happening, she charged at me with a metal water bottle in her hand. She started swinging it wildly, hitting my arms as I tried to protect myself. My friend tried to pull her away from me, but Karen turned around and struck her hard in the head with the bottle. My friend collapsed onto the sidewalk, holding her head. Several passers-by rushed to help us. 2 men tried to restrain Karen, but she was like a woman possessed, still screaming and trying to break free. That's when our 2 friends arrived to pick us up. Both of them are bodybuilders who compete professionally. The moment Karen saw these 2 huge guys approaching, she finally stopped struggling. One bystander had already called the police, and we could hear sirens approaching. My bodybuilder friends made sure Karen couldn't leave, though she had suddenly transformed from a raging monster into a sobbing victim. When the police arrived, Karen started crying even harder. She tried to tell the officers that we foreigners had attacked her and that she was just defending herself. But at least 15 people immediately spoke up, including the cafe staff who had come outside. They all told the police exactly what happened. The paramedics arrived shortly after and took my friend to the hospital. She had a concussion and needed stitches. Karen was arrested and charged with assault and battery. Because of the racist nature of her attack, she was also charged with a hate crime. My friend's parents hired a really good lawyer, and Karen ended up getting sentenced to 3 years in prison plus mandatory anger management and cultural sensitivity training. She also had to pay for all of my friend's medical bills and additional damages. In court, the judge made an example out of her, stating that this kind of behavior has no place in our society. The cafe now has a sign at the entrance that reads, "All languages welcome here," in multiple languages, including Hindi. The owner put it up a week after the incident, and it always makes me smile when I visit. I've been working there since I turned 18, trying to save up money for college while taking classes part-time at the local community college. Being biracial has always made me feel like I exist in two worlds, but I never expected it to cause such a scene at my workplace. It was a typical Wednesday afternoon shift, and I was manning the deli counter alone since we were short-staffed. Everyone else was either on break or handling the lunch rush in other departments. A white woman, probably in her 60s, approached the counter first. She was wearing work boots and a flannel shirt, looking like she'd just finished the shift herself. I greeted her with a welcome to the deli and asked what I could get for her today. She politely requested some sliced ham, and I asked her how thin she would like it cut. While I was taking her order, two other customers came to wait in line, a mother and daughter. I made eye contact with them and gave them a polite smile, letting them know I would be right with them after helping the current customer. I started slicing the ham for the first customer, and that's when everything went sideways. I heard raised voices behind me, and when I turned around, the daughter was pointing at me, her face twisted with anger, while her mother was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The daughter started yelling about how I had disrespected her mother, claiming they'd been dealing with this kind of treatment their whole lives and were sick of it. I stood there, completely confused. I hadn't even started serving them yet. I apologized and asked what seemed to be the problem, genuinely not understanding the situation. The daughter became even more aggressive, accusing me of playing dumb and claiming I was serving the white customer first because of her race. She then called me a fat witch, pointing out my size 12 figure, as if it were an insult. I was stunned. First of all, I'm a size 12, perfectly average. Second, I was just serving customers in the order they arrived. Before I could defend myself, my manager rushed over and asked what the problem was. The daughter immediately complained about me to the manager, claiming I was discriminating against them and had refused to serve them, making her mother cry. Instead of asking for my side of the story, my manager immediately started apologizing to them. She offered them free fried chicken to make things right, which felt like an equally problematic gesture. After giving them their free food, my manager called me to the back room. She said we needed to talk about what happened. I tried to explain that I was just serving customers in order and that the first customer was there before them, but she cut me off. That's when my manager launched into the most uncomfortable racist rant I'd ever heard. She went on about those people always causing problems and making scenes. What made it worse was that my co-workers who had gathered around started nodding and adding their own prejudiced comments. I simply said I was half black myself. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My manager's face turned red, but she quickly changed the subject and sent me back to work. I documented everything that happened that day, including the racist rant. I sent an email to Human Resources detailing the incident, but I didn't hear anything back immediately. However, karma has a way of working things out. A few months later, loss prevention caught my manager stealing from the registers. But that wasn't all. During their investigation, they found my complaint and several others about her discriminatory behavior. They fired her on the spot and escorted her out of the building. They promoted one of our assistant managers to replace her, a wonderful woman who actually stood up for her employees and treated everyone with respect. The new manager called me into her office on her first day and told me she had read about what happened. She assured me that kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated anymore and that they were making changes around here. Within a month, the entire atmosphere of the store changed. We had mandatory anti-discrimination training, and several of the co-workers who had joined in on the racist rant either shaped up or shipped out. As for me, I got a promotion to shift lead and a nice raise to go with it. Sometimes I still see the mother and daughter shopping in our store. They avoid my counter, which is fine by me. But at least now I know that if anything like that happens again, I've got management that has my back. I've always been passionate about theater. Ever since I was a kid putting on shows in my backyard with bed sheets as curtains. Through high school and college, I practically lived in our theater, volunteering for every production I could. When I graduated with my degree in theater arts, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, become a stage manager. I worked my way up from being a stagehand to finally landing my dream job as an assistant stage manager at one of our local theaters. It's not the biggest venue in town, but we put on some amazing shows, and I'm proud of every production I help bring to life. The theater community here is pretty tight knit. We all know each other and often help each other out with connections and favors. That's how I ended up in this situation with my future mother in law. She's always been, let's say, particular about what she considers real work. When my fiance first told her about my career, she just smiled that tight little smile of hers and made a dismissive comment about how creative my career choice was. I should have known then that this would become an issue. One day, she called me asking for a huge favor. She'd heard that Aladdin was coming to the biggest theater in town. You know, the one that hosts all the traveling Broadway shows. These tickets usually go for about $150 each, and that's if you're lucky enough to get them before they sell out. Season tickets run about $1,000 per seat for 7 shows, so it's not exactly pocket change. I told her I might be able to help since one of our directors was married to someone on the theater's board, and I offered to see what I could do. I pulled some strings, called in a favor with my director, and managed to score 2 prime seats at less than half price, $75 for both. It was a steal, really. I reserved them under my name, and my future mother-in-law seemed thrilled. A few weeks later, she invited my fiancé and me over for dinner. Everything was going fine until somehow the conversation turned to housework. My future sister-in-law, who's a teacher married to an accountant, mentioned how she and her husband split everything, 50-50. My future mother-in-law seemed fine with that arrangement and asked about how my fiancé and I planned to handle things when we moved in together. When I explained that we'd probably do the same 50-50 split, I noticed her expression change immediately. She scoffed at the idea, saying it wasn't fair since my fiancé worked full-time while implying that I didn't. When I defended myself by explaining that I did work full-time, just with different hours due to theater work, she laughed dismissively. She then proceeded to belittle my career, calling it just a silly side gig, and suggested that I wouldn't understand what real work felt like until I got a real job. The room went silent. My future sister-in-law looked uncomfortable, and my fiancé started to say something, but I just sat there, letting her words sink in. 15 years of dedication to my craft, reduced to a silly side gig. The next morning, I called the theater's box office. I simply asked to cancel the tickets reserved under my name. When the box office worker asked if I wanted to reserve different seats, I politely declined. I sent her a text explaining that since she didn't consider my job real, she wouldn't be able to benefit from its perks, and that I'd canceled her tickets. Then I turned off my phone and went to work, my very real work, managing a full day of technical rehearsals for our upcoming show. When I turned my phone back on that evening, I found multiple missed calls and angry texts from her. She was demanding to know what I meant about canceling the tickets, insisting that I couldn't do that, explaining that her friend was flying in specifically for this show, calling me unprofessional, and demanding that I answer my phone immediately. When I finally called her back, I remained calm despite her fury. I suggested she might still be able to get tickets if she called the box office herself. She was outraged, demanding that I get the tickets back. I responded sarcastically, telling her that my silly side gig didn't have that kind of pull, and she'd have to go through official channels like everyone else with a real job. She ended up having to pay $150 per ticket, and their seats were way up in the mezzanine instead of the orchestra section where I'd originally gotten them. The next time I saw her at a family dinner, she made a point of asking me about our latest production and how challenging it must be to coordinate everything. Amazing how quickly people's perspectives can change when they realize your silly side gig comes with valuable perks. I come from what you might call a complicated family. My parents split up when I was 8, leaving me and my 2 older sisters to be raised by our mom. Our dad wasn't exactly father of the year material, so we cut ties with him. But his side of the family, they stuck around like a bad penny, especially my aunt. My grandmother had this weird way of playing favorites. My oldest sister could do no wrong. She was the golden child. My middle sister, she got the short end of the stick, treated like she was somehow defective. Me, I was pretty much invisible, which came with its own set of problems. But looking back, maybe I dodged the bullet. The way they treated my middle sister during her teenage years was something straight out of a Mean Girls movie. They'd make up these horrible stories about her and blame my mom for being a terrible parent. I won't get into the details because honestly, some things are better left unsaid. My sister eventually got fed up and called them out on their behavior, which led to them giving her the cold shoulder for years. Then something interesting happened. My middle sister married the successful guy and moved overseas. Suddenly, she was the family favorite. Funny how money changes people's perspectives, right? 3 years ago, my aunt had her first kid at 39. The birth was pretty rough, and I think it messed with her head more than she lets on. She went full-on Pinterest mom. You know the type. Essential oils everywhere, preaching about natural childbirth, the whole 9 yards. Before the baby, she had this impressive career where people actually respected her expertise. I noticed my middle sister seemed upset after talking with our aunt, so I asked her what happened. When she told me, I could hardly believe it. Our aunt had asked her to move back home for a whole year to be her nanny. When I pointed out that my sister had her own career, she explained that our aunt had even offered to pay her, as if that would convince her to drop everything and fly 16 hours just to be her babysitter. The harassment went on for weeks. My aunt kept calling and messaging until my sister finally started ignoring her. But did that stop my aunt? Of course not. She just came up with more ridiculous demands. One day my sister got a call at 3 a.m. Our aunt was going on about wanting my sister to buy some battery-powered car for her kid and bring it on the plane when she visited. When my sister reminded her about the time difference, our aunt barely acknowledged it and kept talking about the car. My sister tried explaining that she couldn't bring a car on a plane, but our aunt insisted it could be checked as luggage. When my sister mentioned the cost, our aunt just made a snide comment about how my sister and her husband could afford it since they made good money. Another time, our aunt called about some purebred puppy she'd found. She asked my sister to buy it and bring it over, casually mentioning it was only a few $1,000s. When my sister refused to fly across the world with a puppy, our aunt tried guilt-tripping her by saying her precious angel needed a companion and reminded my sister how she was always traveling anyway. These days, the aunt calls at random hours just to chat about nothing. My sister's gotten pretty good at screening her calls, but sometimes she still gets caught. Last week, my aunt tried her latest scheme. She called our grandmother to complain about how my sister is too good for the family now and doesn't care about her nephew. My sister finally had enough. She sent a message to the whole family laying down the law. She explained that she had her own life, career, and family, and she wasn't going to be anyone's personal shopper or on-call nanny. She warned them that if the demands and guilt-tripping didn't stop, she'd block them all again. The family explosion was epic. My aunt had a meltdown on social media about ungrateful relatives and family obligations. But this time, something different happened. My oldest sister, the former golden child, actually stood up for our middle sister. She shared screenshots of all the ridiculous requests and middle-of-the-night calls. Now my aunt is getting a taste of her own medicine. The extended family is giving her the cold shoulder, and even my grandmother had to admit that maybe she's been enabling some bad behavior. I'm still flying under the radar, getting occasional grief for not calling enough. But honestly, I'll take being ignored over being harassed any day. My middle sister, she's living her best life overseas with her social media full of exotic vacation photos that drive my aunt crazy.